Okay, well, thanks everybody once again for coming and giving us the opportunity to talk about some.
Right by
Danielle.
yeah, just there. That's
Tem
good.
monte de cadeira extra lá.
Well, once again, thank you all for coming and giving us the opportunity to meet with you and talk about some ideas that have been gestating over basically decades now in different contexts. And I'll give some background on that. I want to introduce my colleague Franklin Paniagua from Costa Rica, who's going to serve as our facilitator. He's got obviously big shoes to fill, given Chado's excellent work the last 2 days. But Franklin is himself an expert facilitator, and he works with me in a program in Costa Rica where we bring law students and graduate students from literally around the world to work together on international and comparative environmental law projects. The other person I'll recognize here, who you'll hear a lot more from, is Manolo Morales. And Manolo is the sort of maybe the gestation of the idea that at least we've been focusing on over the last couple of years, and that goes all the way back to 1991. And so it tells you sort of how long things simmer and so forth in different contexts. And this is the idea of developing a program to train, in this case, indigenous, but in other cases, community leaders or representatives in the fundamentals of the law and the legal processes that affect them in order that they can more effectively represent their communities in processes, all the different scales that we've been talking about. And the idea, the term for this has been coined as paralegals. That term has technical meaning in some legal systems, such as our own here in the United States. So it doesn't have to be the term that's ultimately used. But knowing of Manolo's work in Ecuador, developing a program and successfully executing it for 20 years now, for community-based paralegals in Ecuador to represent the communities, particularly in the area of gaining their land titles. We talked about the possibility of this working elsewhere. And so in order to advance that discussion, we brought Maida and her colleague Neiva from Brazil to Costa Rica and spent a month essentially talking about ways to enhance the ability of indigenous peoples to have voices in the legal system, in the Western legal system that they have to coexist with, I suppose is the best way to put it. And we worked through it, had a aha moment that maybe Maida will tell you about in the mountains of Costa Rica, where there's no electricity, there's no internet, and all there was a blackboard. It wasn't even a whiteboard, it was a blackboard.
Candlelight.
Candlelight, maybe some vino, who knows. And came up with this idea of at least a component of it being this idea of paralegals that Manolo gave us work elsewhere. And that elsewhere, we then came back. It's only a month in Costa Rica, so it's hard to get anything done, as Franklin will tell you. But we came back with that idea, and we had the opportunity to have two students, Honor Humphrey here, Honor, and Pilar Morales. Pilar is from Spain, Honor is from the United States. She's in our master's program in environmental law, and we asked them to look around the globe at community-based paralegal programs. And what we learned was that there are many of them, from the Philippines to India, where else? Africa, Tanzania, is that what it is? Mozambique. So this is an idea that was spread. One of the reasons it was spread, one of the ways it was spread, was there was a student in our Costa Rica program, Tiernan Menes, in 2004 or 5, from Cornell Law School. He took a job at the George Soros Foundation, the Open Society Foundation. He remembered working on this back then in some context, or at least having that discussion, and he began a project through that foundation to look around the globe at different programs. And that became sort of the seed source for the work that Pilar and Honor have done. So we're not going to go into their work, which they just presented at Columbia University at the International Conference on Sustainable Development for time, but we have their PowerPoint, which gives you the trajectory of history in this idea of community-based paralegals. I'm going to turn it over now to Maida, who's going to talk about the larger context in Brazil and how that might function, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.